All right, let's jump right in. We're going to unpack the surprisingly complex and often frustrating world of sending money across borders. We'll look at why it's so slow and then walk through a really interesting four-step evolution that could completely change the grammar of global finance.
So, have you ever had this happen? You send money internationally and it just disappears. For days, you're left wondering where it is, when it'll arrive. It's a common headache. And the reason why is that the entire global financial system is actually built on a pretty deep architectural flaw.
Honestly, the best way to picture the system we have today is like a massive global game of telephone. You know the one. A bank sends a message to another bank who passes it on to the next one, and so on down the line. The problem? Nobody can see the whole picture. Each bank only sees its one little piece of the puzzle. There's no shared screen, no single view of the payment from start to finish.
Now, the technical term for this problem is stateless. And all that means is that the truth about your payment isn't in any single place. It's broken up, scattered across the private books of every single bank in that chain. They're essentially just firing off messages and hoping for the best. It's a fire and forget system.
And this statelessness, it has huge real-world costs. When a payment gets stuck, and they do, it kicks off these painful manual investigations with people sending emails and making phone calls just to find it. Banks have to park billions of dollars in idle cash in these special accounts called Nostro accounts, just as a buffer against all this uncertainty. And you have whole armies of people whose entire job is just to constantly check and recheck to make sure their bank's version of the truth matches everyone else's. It's a massive hidden tax on the whole global economy. So to fix this, it's not just about better technology, it's about a fundamental shift in philosophy. We have to change the very grammar of finance. Today's system uses what you could call the imperative mood. It just shouts fragile commands. Pay this person, do this. But if any link in that chain can't obey, the whole thing breaks. A future system would use the declarative mood. It would focus on getting everyone to say, we agree this is true before a single dollar ever moves. It's about agreement, not just command.
And the proposed solution to make this happen is this idea of a context agent. The easiest way to think about it is like a secure pop-up digital meeting room that gets created for just one single payment. Everyone involved, the sender's bank, the receiver's bank, all the banks in the middle, gets invited into this virtual room where they can all look at the exact same information on the same screen and agree on the plan together.
Now, you can't just flip a switch on the entire global financial system. That would be chaos. So this is a pragmatic four-phase evolution. It's a journey. We start with a simple assistant, then it evolves into an orchestrator, then a hybrid system, and finally we get to a completely new native state. Let's walk through what each of those steps looks like.
So phase one is the assistant, and the key phrase here is shadow layer. This is so important. It doesn't try to rip and replace the existing payment system. That's Swift. Instead, it just runs quietly in the background in parallel, making the old system work a whole lot smarter.
So here's how the assistant would work. First, everyone gets invited into that digital meeting room, the context, to pre-validate the whole payment path. Do you have the money? Is the compliance info right? Everyone has to digitally commit. Once they all have, the context gives a green light. Only then is the old school Swift message sent, but this time it has a special tracking number. The context then watches that payment's journey, completely automating that painful reconciliation process and spotting any errors the second they happen.
Okay, phase two is where we really level up. The context is no longer just a helpful assistant running in the shadows. It becomes the orchestrator. That digital agreement that everyone made in the meeting room, that now becomes the official, legally binding instruction for the payment. This is a massive shift. It's a complete flip of the hierarchy. See, today, the Swift message itself is the source of truth. But in phase two, the real source of truth becomes the digital contract created in the context. The Swift message? It's just a technical byproduct, something that gets generated automatically from the real agreement. The whole power dynamic has been inverted.
Now we get to phase three, the hybrid network. At this point, we're not just coordinating the old system anymore. We're actually starting to replace pieces of it. We begin to build what the source material calls these amazing islands of trust.
And this is made possible by a totally new concept, the ITL claim. So instead of sending a message that promises you'll pay, a bank can now issue a cryptographically secure digital asset that is the obligation to pay. You can think of it like a digital programmable cashier's check. This lets two banks on the new system swap value instantly with no messaging delay. And this is the magic of the hybrid model.
Take a look. Let's say Bank A and Bank B are both on the new system. The first leg of the payment between them can be an instant final settlement using these new ITL claims. But the context is smart. It knows Bank C is still on the old legacy system. So for the second leg, it just tells Bank B, okay, now send a regular old SWIFT message to Bank C. It's the best of both worlds. It's fast and fully backward compatible.
Which brings us to the end game. Phase 4, the native state. This is what happens when more and more banks join these islands of trust. Eventually, the network hits a tipping point, and the old way of doing business, of sending messages back and forth, it just becomes obsolete.
And this leads to a pretty profound outcome, the death of the notification. I mean, think about it. Why do we send messages in the first place? It's to notify someone else that we've changed something in our own private records. But what if everyone is already sharing the same record in the context? Well, then there's nothing to notify anyone about. The message itself becomes totally redundant.
This new reality lets us achieve something finance has been chasing for decades: true atomic settlement. This is the guaranteed, simultaneous exchange of assets. That huge risk that you might pay someone but not get paid back, it's gone. It's eliminated. The transaction either happens for everyone, all at once, in full, or it doesn't happen at all.
So what's the real-world impact of all this? Well, how many people do you need for the job of reconciliation, of checking all the different versions of the truth when there's only one shared version of the truth? The answer is 0. An entire industry built around managing this financial friction could just disappear.
Ultimately, this whole journey is about something much bigger than just faster, cheaper payments. As the source material puts it so well, it's really about transforming the very nature of how the world agrees on value. We're talking about moving from a system of disconnected islands to a single, cohesive continent of trust.
And to that really leaves us with one final big question. If we can actually rebuild our financial system on a foundation of shared, verifiable agreement, instead of these fragile, blind commands, what else becomes possible? What could we build on top of a truly global network of trust?